Welcome to Preview. Preview is a JISC-funded project to deliver problem-based learning scenarios for students on healthcare courses via the virtual environment Second Life. 4 different problem-based learning scenarios have been developed for paramedic students here on the St George's University Second Life Island, with different environments set up to put the scenarios into relevant contexts, whether it be an underground, a high street, or a nightclub. The scenarios developed at St George's are based on widely used resources known as virtual patients, online narrative-driven cases that test students' decision-making skills and their ability to apply their knowledge to realistic scenarios. The cases adhere to the Medbiquitous Virtual Patient Standard, meaning that the scenarios can be interoperable between any platform, whether it be a virtual world or a web browser. Using the virtual patient format of narrative with choices that ultimately affect the path of a scenario, 2 different types of scenario have been developed, an avatar-driven and an information-driven. The information-driven scenario has the case narrative displayed on a giant screen that the students can collaborate around. Students can view media, such as images or sound files, at certain points in the case by selecting the media button. At various points in the case, they will have to make decisions on what to do next. To make a choice, they select one of the numbered buttons down the side that corresponds to the numbered option written on the screen. The narrative describing what is happening will then reflect what they have decided to do. For example, if they choose to introduce themselves to the patient, any other correspondence with the patient is easy. If they do not introduce themselves, any other correspondence they attempt will not yield a forthcoming response from the patient. Students collaborate around the information-driven scenarios by having a designated member of the group to choose the options on the player, and they all see the same big screen. This type of scenario is very similar to online virtual patient cases, the only difference being that in Second Life they all view the same resource together and proceed together, discussing what decisions to make within their PBL group. The avatar-driven scenarios make more use of objects within Second Life. With these scenarios, they also start from a screen with some narrative describing the initial information, such as the dispatch call a paramedic would get as they are dispatched to an incident. Quickly the scenario moves beyond the screen to the surrounding environment. The patient is represented through a non-player character, which is essentially an avatar that is not controlled by anyone. There are various different objects, as well as the patient themselves. For example, one of the first things the students have to do is decide on a suitable place to park the ambulance, and decide whether they need to use their radio to call for backup. As with the information-driven scenarios, the scenario adapts to reflect the decisions the students have made. Some information is still represented to the student via text on the screen. To stop the students from having to keep referring back to the screen when interacting with the environment, they are able to attach a heads-up display, which will always appear in the corner of their view. Then when information appears, they can see it easily without having to move back to check the screen. Students are able to ask the patient questions or observe and assess them by clicking on the various parts of the avatar. The paramedic students also receive an equipment box stored in their inventory. This lists all the equipment that a paramedic would routinely have available to them in real life. At any point, they can drag an object from their inventory that they would like to use and click on it to select the possible options. As with the information-driven scenarios, each scenario needs to have a person nominated to act as the clicker, who will interact with the object once the group have decided what action to take. For example, if the group decide they need to administer a painkiller, the clicker will pull the pill box out of their inventory. Although all students have the same inventory list to refer to, only one of them needs to pull it out into the environment. Once the object is out of the inventory, all of the students can click on it to see the possible actions available. In the example of the pill box, they can see the drugs available to administer. Again, once they decide which option to then choose, only the clicker selects it. The scenario will update to reflect this decision, and this update will be visible to everyone. All the scenarios start with dispatch to scene, followed by an assessment of the patient, a decision of how to treat, and then transfer to hospital. They all end with the handover at hospital, in which the students summarise the case on a note card that then gets posted to their tutor.